the laughter. That's what I always loved the most. It was our Friday night symphony, a familiar sound that filled our favorite corner booth at Giuliano's. The restaurant was loud, clattering plates, bursts of conversation, the distant sizzle from the kitchen, but the three of us existed in a perfect bubble of warm light and shared smiles. As a senior marketing strategist, my brain usually moves at the speed of a rising stock, but sitting here, I finally felt my shoulders unlock from the week's tension. I leaned my head against the worn leather of the booth, nursing a glass of Chianti, and just watched. On my left sat Dylan. My Dylan. He's a force of nature in a well-tailored suit, even on a casual Friday. His ambition was one of the first things I'd fallen in love with. He's a partner at a rapidly expanding financial tech startup, and he has a way of talking about data projections that makes it sound like poetry. Tonight, however, he was just my boyfriend, his dark hair slightly messy, his tie loosened, and his eyes crinkling at the corners as he laughed at something I just said. He reached across the table, his fingers finding mine, lacing them together. A simple, grounding touch that said, "We're a team." Across from us, animated and bright, was Ava. Ava wasn't just my friend, she was an institution in my life. We'd been roommates in college, a chaotic duo who had navigated bad exams, worse breakups, and the terrifying leap into the real world together. Where I'm strategic and measured, Ava is spontaneous and fiery. She's a co-founder at Dylan's startup, a brilliant coder who had built the back end of their entire platform. It was, in fact, Ava who had introduced us. "I'm telling you, Sam," Ava said, pointing a breadstick at me for emphasis, "if you hadn't forgotten your keys that day, I never would have brought Dylan back to the apartment, and you two would still be a tragic what-if." "And you," Dylan chimed in, picking up the thread of our familiar story, "would have walked in, seen me on the couch, and still assumed I was just another one of Ava's weird art projects." I laughed, a genuine, deep sound. "You were wearing a plaid blazer with striped socks, Ava. It was a visual crime. I thought you were staging an intervention." "Fashion forward, Sam." "It's called fashion forward," Dylan defended himself, though the smile playing on his lips told me he knew he'd lost this argument years ago. "It was a cry for help," Ava retorted, taking a sip of her wine. "Thank God you came along and taught him how to match. Honestly, I don't know what either of you would do without me." And that was the truth. Or, at least, it was my truth. Ava was the glue. The three of us weren't just a couple and a friend, we were a unit. We had Sunday brunches, movie marathons, and a running group chat that was a constant stream of inside jokes, work complaints, and dinner plans. I looked at the two of them, my loving boyfriend, my loyal best friend. The two most important people in my world, working together, building an empire, and still making time to debate Dylan's questionable college fashion. My life felt like a perfectly constructed campaign, every piece falling into place. It was stable. I was happy. It was real. "A toast," Dylan said suddenly, raising his glass. The playful energy softened, his gaze turning serious as he locked eyes with me. "To Sam. She's been working around the clock on the Project Nova launch, and I know she's going to get that promotion." Ava's glass went up instantly. "To Sam. The marketing queen. You're going to be running that entire department by this time next year." Warmth flooded my chest. "Guys, it's not a done deal yet. My boss, Frank, is still playing his cards close to his chest." "Oh, please," Ava scoffed, waving her hand. "You've given that company its three biggest clients. If they don't give you the senior VP slot, they're insane." "Right, Dill?" "Completely insane," Dylan agreed. He squeezed my hand. "You've earned it, Sam. More than anyone." His support was my bedrock. It always has been. While my job was demanding, so was his. We understood the long hours, the just one more email at 10 p.m., the shared exhaustion that melted away when we finally fell into bed together. We were a power couple, but one built on quiet support, not just public ambition. "Well," I said, feeling a blush rise to my cheeks. "To us, then. To everything we're building." "To us," they echoed, the glasses clinking together. The sound was clear and bright. It sounded, for all the world, like the truth. The following Tuesday, I felt the truth of my own words. I was good at what I did. I stood at the head of a glass-walled boardroom on the 42nd floor, the skyline of the city sprawling out behind me. My audience was my boss, Frank, the stoic CEO, and two potential clients who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "The problem," I said, my voice calm and even, "is not your product. Your product is revolutionary. The problem is your story. Right now, you're selling a machine. You need to be selling a feeling." I clicked the remote, and the screen behind me changed from a complex chart to a simple, powerful image, a father and daughter laughing on a bike ride. You don't sell advanced lithium-ion technology, I continued, walking slowly along the table. You sell the extra hour of daylight. You sell the weekend adventure that doesn't get cut short. You sell time. That's the one thing no one can buy, and it's the one thing your battery gives them. I saw a flicker of interest in the CEO's eyes. I had him. For the next 20 minutes, I didn't just present a campaign, I told a story. I laid out a multi-platform strategy, complete with social media engagement, community-focused events, and a new tagline that was simple, emotional, and devastatingly effective. When I finished, the room was silent. Frank, a man who usually looked like he was sucking on a lemon, slowly smiled. The clients looked at each other and nodded. Ms. Reed, the CEO finally said, standing up to shake my hand. That was exceptional. We're in. The victory was sweet. As I walked back to my office, my heels clicking on the polished marble, I felt the familiar buzz of a win. This was what I was built for. I pulled out my phone to text the good news to the group chat, but a message from Ava was already there. Ava, 1:15 p.m. How'd the pitch go? I smiled. Ava always remembered. Sam, 1:16 p.m. We got it. They're in, smiley face, smiley face. The reply was instantaneous. Ava, 1:16 p.m. Yes. Knew it. We are celebrating this weekend. Dylan's orders. He's planning something. Sam, 1:17 p.m. He is? He didn't say anything to me. Ava, 1:17 p.m. He mentioned it this morning at the office. I just wanted to make sure we had a reason to celebrate first. You know how he is, winky face. Now back to work, superstar. I slipped my phone into my pocket, a small, fond smile on my face. It was just like them. Dylan, the planner, wanted to celebrate my victories. Ava, the messenger, making sure I felt the love. How have I ever gotten so lucky? I was still riding the high when Frank called me into his office at 4 p.m. Close the door, Sam, he said, gesturing to the chair. My heart did a quick stutter step. This was it. That presentation today, he began, steepling his fingers. That wasn't just a good pitch. That was leadership. You didn't just sell them a campaign, you sold them a new identity. Thank you, Frank. I really believe in their product. I know you do. Which is why you're the only one I trust to lead the new division. He leaned forward. The Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy position is yours, Sam. It's a 30% raise, a corner office, and a team of 20. You've earned it. My breath caught. I'd wanted this. I'd worked for this. But hearing the words felt like a dream. Frank. Thank you. I'm honored. I won't let you down. I know you won't, he said, handing me a folder. It's all here. The official announcement is Monday. Go home. Celebrate. I walked out of his office in a daze, the heavy folder feeling like a trophy in my hands. I couldn't wait to tell Dylan. I could already imagine his face, the way his eyes would light up, the proud, crushing hug he would give me. I pictured calling Ava, who would probably scream loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies, a quote from an old movie I'd seen once whispered in the back of my mind. It was a strange, random thought. I shook it off. It comes with a smile. I looked around the bustling office, at my colleagues smiling and waving congratulations as I passed. I thought of Dylan's proud smile, Ava's excited. They were the furthest thing from enemies. They were my family. The thought vanished as quickly as it had come, replaced by the overwhelming, brilliant joy of my success. That evening, I found a note taped to our apartment door. Don't bother with your key. Just ring the bell. D. I smiled, my stomach fluttering with anticipation. I rang the bell, and the door swung open. Dylan stood there, not in his work suit, but in the dark jeans and a soft gray sweater I loved. The apartment behind him was dim, lit only by a dozen or so candles. On our small dining table, 2 plates were set, and a bottle of our favorite champagne was chilling in an ice bucket. Mr. Reed, I said, leaning in for a kiss. What is all this? I believe, he said, his lips brushing mine, that I heard some news about a certain senior vice president. Ava. I laughed, stepping inside. She told you. She might have sent an emergency text, he admitted, wrapping his arms around my waist and pulling me close. The folder dropped to the floor as I wrapped my arms around his neck. I'm so proud of you, Sam. He kissed me, and it wasn't a rushed, end-of-the-day kiss. It was slow and deep, full of the pride and love he'd just spoken of. When he finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. This is it, you know. Everything we've been working for. Everything, I whispered, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. I can't believe it. Believe it. He guided me to the table. I attempted your favorite. Carbonara. I laughed, looking at the plates. It was a noble effort. It looks amazing, Dill. Thank you. This is all perfect. Almost perfect, he said. He picked up his phone. One more thing. He tapped the screen, and a second later, Ava's face popped up on FaceTime, propped against the champagne bottle. There she is. Ava's voice cheered from the tiny speaker. The new senior VP. Look at you two. Did he burn the pasta? It's al dente, Dylan shot back, making me laugh. Congratulations, Sam, seriously, Ava said, her smile wide and genuine. No one deserves this more than you. You've worked your tail off for this. I couldn't have done it without you guys, I said, my eyes misting over. You two are everything. Ugh, stop, you'll make me cry, Ava said, fanning her eyes. Listen, I can't stay. I'm just heading out to meet my sister, but I had to see your face. Pop that champagne. Drink the whole bottle. And Dill, don't let her answer a single work email tonight. That's an order. Yes, ma'am, Dylan said with a mock salute. Love you both. Talk tomorrow. And the screen turned dark. She's the best, I murmured, sinking into my chair. She really is, Dylan agreed, his voice a little quiet. He busied himself with opening the champagne. Cork pop was punctuation that day. He poured 2 glasses, the pale gold liquid bubbling happily. He handed one to me, but his expression was unreadable for just a moment in the flickering candlelight. What is it? I asked softly. He shook his head, the look vanishing, replaced by his familiar smile. Nothing. Just thinking. He raised his glass. To Samantha Reed. The most brilliant, beautiful, and driven woman I've ever known. You're going to take over the world. Just the 42nd floor for now, I smiled. Today, the 42nd floor. Tomorrow, the world. We drank. The champagne was crisp and cold. The pasta was, as predicted, slightly undercooked, but I ate every bite. We talked for hours, not about work, but about the future. We planned a vacation to Italy, argued playfully about whether we should finally adopt a dog, and reminisced about the tiny, run-down apartment we'd first shared. Later, as we lay in bed, the city lights painting a soft glow on the ceiling, I snuggled into Dylan's side. His arm was a heavy, comforting weight around me. This is it, isn't it? I whispered into the darkness. This is it, he confirmed, his voice sleepy. I was just drifting off, balanced on that perfect, soft edge of sleep, when I felt his phone vibrate on the nightstand. It was a short, buzzy sound. A second later, it vibrated again. Work? I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. He said. He didn't move for a second. Just the late-night server report. It's automatic. Okay. I felt him shift, carefully, trying not to wake me. He slipped his arm out from under me and reached for the phone. Through my half-closed eyelids, I saw the blue-white light of the screen illuminate his face for just a second. His thumbs moved, typing something quick and silent. Then he put the phone back. But he placed it screen first. A tiny, strange part of my brain registered that. He always leaves it screen up. But the thought was like a drop of ink in water. It dissolved instantly. I was too happy, too tired, too safe. I let the darkness take me, my mind filled with images of corner offices, Italian villas, and the unwavering, supportive smile of my boyfriend. Monday morning felt like the first day of the rest of my life. I woke up before my alarm, the sunlight streaming into the bedroom feeling different, sharper. I felt a buzz under my skin, a humming energy that had nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the heavy, official-looking folder sitting on my desk. Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy. Dylan had left early, a 7 a.m. investor breakfast, he'd mumbled, kissing me goodbye in the dark. I was a little disappointed, I'd wanted to have coffee with him, to share one last normal morning before the big announcement. But I understood. His work was as demanding as mine. I took extra time getting ready. I chose the power suit, a sharp, navy blue blazer with matching trousers that always made me feel like I could command a room. My reflection in the mirror looked different. The woman staring back at me wasn't just Sam. She was Ms. Reed. She was a boss. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes with a smile. That stupid quote, again. It popped into my head as I was applying my mascara, a ghost at the feast. I scowled at my reflection and shook it off. It was just nerves. Today was a celebration. My first few hours at the office were a blur of congratulations. My team had decorated my new corner office with balloons and a banner that read "The VP is in." Frank made the official announcement at 9:30 a.m., and my email inbox immediately exploded with well wishes from colleagues and clients. It was overwhelming in the best way. Around 1 p.m., I finally sat down at my huge, polished wood desk. The city skyline stretched before me, a concrete kingdom I was finally ready to conquer. I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it almost knocked the wind out of me. I thought of Dylan's proud smile, of Ava's supportive texts. They were the ones who had listened to me panic about that presentation, the ones who had told me I had it in me all along. I should surprise them. The thought hit me like a jolt. They were always celebrating with me. It was my turn. I glanced at my calendar. My next meeting wasn't until 3 p.m. Their office was just 10 blocks. It was perfect. My next meeting wasn't until 3 p.m., according to my calendar. Their office was conveniently located just 10 blocks away, making it a perfect fit. I ducked out of the office and went to the upscale market on the corner, the one reserved for special occasions. I bought really good champagne, the kind we always joked we'd buy when we made it. I felt a giddy, almost childish excitement. I pictured the look on their faces when I walked in, bottle in hand, on the biggest day of my career. I texted Dylan, "Hey. Stuck in back-to-back meetings. Might be late. Don't wait until dinner. Love you." A little white lie. It would make the surprise better. His reply was almost instant. "No problem. Big day for us, too. Closing a new round of funding. We're grinding. Love you more." I smiled. Grinding. That was them. So dedicated. The walk to their building was bright and breezy. The city felt electric, like it was celebrating with me. I pushed through the glass doors of their building, the lobby buzzing with tech startup energy. The receptionist, a young woman named Chloe, knew me well. "Hey, Samantha. Here to see Dylan," she smiled. "I am," I said, holding up the chilled bottle, which was now in a sleek black gift bag. "Just bringing a little celebration to the partner's desk." "Oh, they deserve it," she said, waving me through. "They've both been locked in his office all afternoon. I don't think they've even stopped for lunch. Just head on up." "Thanks, Chloe." I stepped into the elevator, my heart doing a happy little drumbeat. I pictured the scene. Ava would probably shriek and jump up to hug me. Dylan would get that slow, proud smile and kiss me, telling me I shouldn't have. It would be perfect. The elevator doors opened onto their floor. It was quieter than usual. Most of the coders and analysts were in the open plan area to the left, headphones on, lost in their work. I turned right, down the short hallway that led to the executive offices. Dylan's office was the last corner. His door was closed. "Locked in all afternoon," Chloe had said. "Grinding." I smiled. They were probably deep in some complex projection, arguing about code and server loads. I shifted the heavy bottle in my hand, raised my other hand, and knocked twice, bright and cheerful. No answer. I frowned. That was odd. I could hear something. A muffled sound, like a radio was on. But not music. Just voices. I knocked again, a little harder. "Dill? Ava? It's me." Still nothing. But the muffled sound stopped. Dead silence. A tiny, cold prickle of something moved up my spine. What is wrong with me? I was being ridiculous. They were probably just on a conference call and had me on mute. I tried the handle. It was unlocked. "Guys, I'm coming in," I shouted, pushing the door open with a laugh. "I hope you're decent, because I come bearing." The words died in my throat. The scene in front of me didn't make sense. My brain tried to process it, but the pieces wouldn't fit. Dylan was there. His desk was neat, his computer screen dark. He was standing in the middle of the room, his back to me. His expensive work shirt was untucked and wrinkled. And Ava was there. She was facing me. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen before. Her hair, usually so perfectly styled, was a mess. But it was the details that stopped the world. Her hands. They were at her waist, fumbling, trying to pull her silk blouse back down. She was tucking in her shirt. And Dylan, his back still to me, his shoulders tensed, was fixing his belt. The black gift bag slipped from my fingers. The champagne bottle hit the thick office carpet with a dull, heavy thud. The sound made them both jump. Ava froze completely, her hands still at her waist. And Dylan. Dylan turned around. Slowly. His face was not my boyfriend's. It was the face of a stranger. His eyes were wide, his lips parted. He looked at the bottle on the floor, then my face. And in that second, I saw it all. The guilt. The panic. The lie. Sam, he breathed, taking a step toward me. His voice was hoarse. I said nothing. I couldn't. My lungs had turned to cement. There was no air. The entire world had become a silent, airless vacuum. Sam, it's not what it looks like, Ava stammered. Her voice was thin and reedy. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Sam, just let us explain, Dylan tried, holding his hands out, as if to calm a wild animal. It just happened. It just happened. The words echoed in the total, screaming silence of my mind. The celebrations. The toasts. You're the best, Sam. Love you both. The hand squeezed. The FaceTime call. The phone turned screen down on the nightstand. It all clicked into place, not like puzzle pieces, but like the shattering of a mirror, every tiny fragment showing me a new angle of my own stupidity. They both stared at me, waiting. Waiting for me to scream, cry, throw something. I could feel the scream building in my chest, a hot, acidic thing. But I thought of my new office. I thought of the boardroom. I thought of the woman I had been just 5 minutes ago, the one who was in command. Betrayal doesn't come from enemies. I looked at Ava, at her terrified, guilty face. My best friend. My sister. I looked at Dylan. My partner. My future. I bent down, my movements feeling slow and robotic, like I was moving underwater. I took the bag with the champagne bottle. I straightened up. Sam, please, Dylan whispered, desperation creeping into his voice. Don't do this. I met his eyes. I held his gaze for 1, 2, 3 seconds. I watched the confidence drain out of him, replaced by the sickening realization of what he'd done. Then, without a word, I turned. I left the office, leaving the door wide open. I heard Ava let out a sound, like a sob or a gasp. I heard Dylan call my name, Sam. Wait. I kept walking. My heels clicked on the polished floor, a steady, rhythmic sound. Click. 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 Each step was an effort of will. I could feel their eyes on my back. I didn't look back. I walked down the hallway, past the open-plan area where people were still working, oblivious. I got to the elevators. I pressed the down button. I stood there, staring at the polished metal doors, my reflection looking back at me. I looked pale. I looked calm. I looked like a complete stranger. Sometimes silence is not a weakness. It's the sound of a storm forming. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. The doors closed, sealing me in. It was only then, in the suffocating quiet of the descending box, that I let out the breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. It came out not as a sound, but as a shudder that racked my entire body. I didn't cry. I just held the bag with the champagne bottle, my knuckles white, and watched the numbers above the door light up in reverse. 4, 3, 2. I walked out of the building, past Chloe at the front desk. She smiled at me. That was quick. Did they love it? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, a tight, painful movement of my head, and pushed through the glass doors. The city that had seemed so bright and electric just minutes before now looked flat and gray. The sounds of traffic and people talking were a dull, painful roar. I walked for blocks, I don't know how many, until I found a trash can. I stopped. I looked at the sleek black bag in my hand. When we made it. I opened the lid and dropped the bottle inside. It landed with a heavy, final clank. And I kept walking, with no idea where I was going. Chapter 3, The Quiet Years. I don't remember walking home. I must have, because hours later, I found myself standing in the middle of our living room. My living room. The candles Dylan had lit for our celebration dinner were still on the table, now just waxy, cold puddles. Both champagne flutes were still by the sink. The apartment was silent, but my mind was screaming. It was replaying the scene. Her hands at her waist. His belt. Over and over. A broken record of betrayal. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone. I pulled it out. 17 missed calls, Dylan 12 missed calls, Ava 42 new texts. I opened the first one from him. Dylan, 2:15 p.m. Sam, please pick up. You didn't let me explain. Dylan, 2:16 p.m. It wasn't. I swear. Dylan, 2:30 p.m. Don't do this. Don't throw this away. Dylan, 3:05 p.m. Ava is a mess. We are both so sorry. It happened. It was a mistake. It just happened. Same pathetic, cowardly words from his office. As if it were a spilled drink, not a calculated destruction of everything we had. I scrolled to Ava's. Ava, 2:18 p.m. Sammy, please. I am dying. Please call me. Ava, 2:19 p.m. I never meant for this to happen. I love you. You know I love you. Ava, 2:40 p.m. He doesn't love me. It was just, we were working late, we were stressed. It meant nothing. It meant nothing. She had managed, in one sentence, to make it worse. She had destroyed my life for nothing. The key scraped in the lock. My entire body became rigid. The door opened, and Dylan rushed in, his face pale and desperate. He looked wrecked. Good. Sam. He breathed my name, relief flooding his face until he saw mine. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, feeling nothing. The woman who had loved him, the woman who had cried over his burnt pasta and cheered for his victories, was gone. She had died in that office. Sam. Talk to me. Yell at me. Hit me. Please say something, he begged, taking a step toward me. Get out, I said. My voice was raspy, alien. What? No. I'm not leaving. We can fix this. There is no we. I walked past him into the bedroom and pulled my largest suitcase from the top of the closet. What are you doing? He asked, panic rising in his voice. Sam, you're not leaving. This is our home. I turned, empty suitcase in hand. It's an apartment. It was never a home. I started pulling clothes from the dresser, throwing them into the bag. T-shirts. Sweaters. Jeans. I didn't care what I packed. Sam, stop. Let's just talk about this. He grabbed my arm. The second his skin touched mine, something snapped. I dropped the clothes and looked him dead in the eye. The cold, quiet shock evaporated, replaced by a sudden, white-hot rage that was so pure it was almost beautiful. Talk about what, Dylan? I said, my voice dangerously low. Talk about how long? How many times? Was it in our bed? Was it on the nights you told me you were grinding? Sam. It wasn't. Was it that night? The night I got my promotion? I saw the flicker in his eyes. He didn't have to answer. Oh my God. The phone. The texts. You were texting her. While I was lying right next to you. He had the decency to look ashamed. It got complicated. Complicated? I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. No. It's simple. You're a liar. And she. I choked on the name. She's a backstabber. You deserve each other. I don't love her, Sam. I love you. It was a stupid, meaningless mistake. Then you're a fool, I said, zipping the suitcase. You didn't just break my heart. You broke my trust. And that doesn't heal. I grabbed my laptop bag, my purse. I walked to the door. Where are you going? He pleaded, his voice breaking. Sam. Don't leave me. Please. I stopped at the door and looked back at him, this man I thought I would marry. He was crying. Tears were streaming down his face. I waited, checking my own heart for any sign of pity, any echo of the love I used to feel. There was nothing. Just a vast, cold, empty space. You didn't break me, I said, the words feeling true as I said them. You just set me free. I left him crying in the hallway and never looked back. The first 6 months were a blur of survival. I stayed on a friend's couch for 3 weeks, a pity case I swore I would never become. I entered Frank's office the day after I left Dylan and resigned. Sam, what are you talking about? He demanded, confused. You just got the VP slot. We just announced it. I know, I said, my voice flat. And I'm grateful. But I have a personal situation. I need a clean break. From everything. He must have seen the dead look in my eyes, because he stopped arguing. He just nodded, signed the paperwork, and told me the door was always open. I took half my savings and rented a tiny, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city, a place with no memories. The first night, I sat on the bare floor, ate takeout from a box, and stared at the beige, empty walls. The silence was deafening. There was no Dylan to talk about his day. No Ava to text with funny memes. It was just me. The grief, when it finally hit, wasn't a soft sadness. It was a physical weight. It was an anchor in my stomach that made it hard to get out of bed, hard to eat, hard to breathe. I had lost, in a single afternoon, my partner, my best friend, my home, and my new career. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was hollow. I let myself drift in that gray, hollow space for weeks. I read books. I took long, aimless walks. I ignored the hundreds of blocked calls and the emails from Dylan and Ava that went straight to a spam folder I never checked. Then one morning I woke up. The grief was still there, but so was something else. Anger. It was the same cold, clean anger from the apartment. It was fuel. I realized I had a choice. I could let this be the story of how I was broken, or I could let it be the story of how I was built. I chose to build. I still knew marketing. I still knew how to tell a story. And I was suddenly, fiercely, alone. I used the rest of my savings to file for an LLC. I called it Luminera Creative. Luminera, from the Latin lumen, light. I was going to be my own light. My first office was in the corner of my tiny living room. My first client was a local bakery that paid me in pastries and $500. I took that $500 and poured it back into the business. I built a website. I started cold calling. I took on clients no big agency would touch, small startups, nonprofits, struggling restaurants. I channeled every ounce of pain I felt into progress. Every time a memory of Dylan's laugh would pop into my head, I'd force myself to read another chapter of a business book. Every time I missed Ava's easy friendship, I'd take another online night course in digital analytics or SEO. I worked 18-hour days. My fuel was black coffee and a burning, singular desire to never, ever be in a position where I had to depend on anyone else for my happiness or my security. It was a quiet, grinding, lonely existence. There were no celebrations, no champagne, no group chats. It was just work. But it was working. The bakery's sales tripled. They recommended me to a local coffee roaster. The roaster got a write-up in a city magazine, and they credited my branding. Suddenly, I wasn't cold calling anymore. People were calling me. After a year, I hired my first employee, a smart, hungry graphic designer. After 2 years, I moved us out of my apartment and into a small, shared co-working space. After 3, I leased our first real office. It was small, just 3 rooms, but it was ours. Luminera Creative grew fast because we were different. We weren't a big, bloated agency. We were lean, we were strategic, and we were relentless. We told stories that felt real. I invested every dollar I made, not just in stocks, but in myself. I learned about finance. I learned about leadership. I learned to be a boss, not just a strategist. I learned how to build a team that wasn't just based on fake smiles and after-work drinks, but on mutual respect and a shared drive. I never dated. I never let anyone get close. My work was my shield, my armor, and my entire world. By 4th grade, Samantha Reed was a name whispered in corporate circles. I wasn't just Sam from marketing anymore. I was the founder of Luminera Creative, the boutique agency that was turning startups into brand name giants. I had become a success, built on the ashes of my old life. I hadn't heard from Dylan or Ava in years. I had no idea what they were doing, and I didn't care. They were ghosts. They were the why that fueled my what. I was in a boardroom, finalizing a huge deal with a new tech client, when my assistant, Jess, interrupted. "Samantha," she said, her voice quiet. "I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a situation. It's about the new prospect meeting for tomorrow." "What is it?" I asked, signing the contract. "The company, FinTech Solutions, the one with the bad PR? They just sent over their final attendee list for the pitch meeting." "And?" I asked, not looking up. "And," Jess said, her voice hesitant. "The 2 partners leading their team, their names are Dylan Reed and Ava Chin." My pen stopped. I looked up, my blood running ice cold. FinTech Solutions. His company. His startup. I hadn't made the connection. The request had come through a third-party consulting firm, all very anonymous. They were in trouble. They needed rebranding. And they had come to me. "Are you okay?" Jess asked, watching my face. A slow, cold smile spread across my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just seen its prey walk willingly into the trap. "Jess," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Please confirm the meeting for 10 a.m. tomorrow. And book the main boardroom. I want them to have a very good view." The hour before the meeting, I didn't feel nervous. I felt, still. I wasn't the 28-year-old strategist who used to get butterflies before a big pitch. I was the 33-year-old founder who had built an agency from pastries and rage. There was a difference. The butterflies were long gone, replaced by a cold, sharp certainty. My office was on the 50th floor, 8 floors higher than the one I'd almost inherited. From here, the city didn't look like a kingdom, it looked like a map. It looked manageable. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, not in a power suit, but in a simple, sleeveless black dress. It was tailored so perfectly it felt less like clothing and more like armor. My hair was pulled back in a sleek, severe bun. The woman I had been, the one who laughed in the corner booth, the one who believed in us, I couldn't even picture her face anymore. Jess, my assistant, came with a tablet. Their finances are, wow, she said. Let me guess, I said, not turning from the window. Hemorrhaging cash, high executive bonuses, and a public image in the toilet. You already saw the file. I didn't need to, I said. I know the leadership. Their company, FinTech Solutions, was a dumpster fire. A series of bad investments, followed by a very public lawsuit from a former employee, had shattered their credibility. They were desperate. They weren't coming here to choose an agency. They were coming here to beg. He expected pity. The line from my outline, my life story, echoed in my head. I offered him a contract. At 9:58 a.m., I walked into the main boardroom. I'd chosen it specifically. The room was vast, dominated by a 30-foot table of polished black granite. One entire wall was glass, overlooking the sprawling city. It was a room designed to make visitors feel small. My lead strategist and my CFO were already seated. I took my place at the head of the table, my back to the door, and looked out at the view. My view. Ms. Reed? Jess's voice came from the door. Mr. Reed and Ms. Chen are here. I took a slow breath, held it, and let it out. Then, I turned. He froze first. Dylan was halfway through the door, his hand outstretched, probably to shake mine, a fake, practiced smile on his face. The smile didn't just fade, it shattered. Blood drained from his face, leaving behind a sick, gray pallor. He looked old. The vibrant energy I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by the dull, exhausted stress of a man who was losing. He was holding a presentation folder, and his grip tightened on it so hard his knuckles turned white. Behind him, I saw Ava. She let out a small, strangled gasp, and her hand flew to her throat. The fiery, spontaneous woman I'd known was gone. This Ava looked brittle, anxious, and diminished. She was clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. She looked, more than anything, frightened. For 1 second, the entire world compressed to just the three of us. The past, the present, the lies, the pain, it all hung in the air, thick and heavy. I let the silence stretch. I let them stand there in the doorway, caught between the past they had destroyed and the future they now, apparently, needed me to save. Then, I broke the spell. Dylan. Ava, I said. My voice was crisp, polite, and completely devoid of any emotion. It was the voice of Ms. Reed, the founder of Luminera Creative, a woman neither of them had ever met. Please, come in. Take a seat. They moved stiffly, like puppets with their strings cut. They didn't take the seats near me. They went to the far end of the long, black table, putting as much distance between us as possible. They looked like schoolchildren called to the principal's office. This is my room, I thought, the realization settling on me with a satisfying weight. This is my table. This is my company. My CFO and strategist, bless their professional hearts, acted as if nothing was wrong. Mr. Reed, Ms. Chen, my CFO, Mark, began. As you know, Luminera specializes in full-scale brand recovery. Dylan wasn't listening. He was just staring at me, his mouth slightly open. Samantha, he finally interrupted, his voice hoarse. We had no idea. The consulting firm, they said you were the best. They never said who. Ava, trying to find some foothold, gave a weak, trembling smile. Sam. My God. You look incredible. This place. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to find the Sammy she knew. I refused to let her. I looked past her and fixed my gaze on Dylan. I cut straight to the bone. Mr. Reed, I said, the formal title hitting him like a slap. I've read your file. Your PR is a disaster, your user trust is at an all-time low, and your burn rate is, frankly, alarming. I understand you're here for a rebranding proposal. He flinched, but the shock of my cold professionalism seemed to jolt him into the present. He was a businessman, after all. A failing one, but he was here to do a job. Yes, he said, clearing his throat. He opened his folder. Yes. Samantha. Ms. Reed. We've hit a few headwinds, that's true. But the core architecture is solid. We're looking for a partner to help us refocus the narrative. He launched into his pitch. It was weak, full of corporate buzzwords like synergy and leveraging assets and core revitalization. He was trying to put a new coat of paint on a house that was collapsing. He was selling a lie. He'd always been good at that. I listened patiently, my hands twisting before me. I didn't take notes. I didn't need to. I already knew every weakness in his company, every flaw in his logic. I knew it better than he did. When he finished, the room was silent. He looked at me, despair barely hidden behind his eyes. He was waiting. Waiting for me to either save him or destroy him. I let the silence hang for another 10 seconds. Your pitch is flawed, Dylan, I said, and the use of his first name this time was not an intimacy, it was a dismissal. You're not fixing the problem. You're trying to hide it. I stood up and walked to the glass wall, looking down at the city. You're not failing because of bad PR, I continued, my back to him. You're failing because of bad leadership. You made reckless investments, you alienated your staff, and you lost the trust of your market. No amount of refocusing the narrative can fix that. Then, what? Ava's voice was a small whisper. What's your proposal, Sam? I turned back to them. My proposal, I said, is that you're right about one thing. The core technology that Ava built, all those years ago, is still sound. It has potential. I walked back to the table and picked up a single, thick, leather-bound folder. It was much heavier than the one he'd brought. I slid it down the polished granite. It moved silently, like a shark through water, stopping perfectly in front of him. He looked at it, confused. What? What is this? Your counterproposal? No, I said, my voice calm and final. That's an acquisition contract. Luminera Creative isn't going to rebrand you. I paused, letting the full weight of the moment land. We're going to buy you. Dylan stared at the folder. He didn't touch it. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, frantic horror. Buy us? He stammered. That's insane. We're not for sale. You've been for sale for 6 months, Dylan, I replied, my voice perfectly level. You just called it seeking a majority investor. I'm just offering you a faster, cleaner exit. This is a joke, Ava said, her voice rising, cracking. This is revenge. You did all this just to hurt us? I almost laughed. The narcissism was breathtaking. She genuinely believed my past 5 years of 18-hour days, my entire life's work, had been about them. This is business, Ms. Chen, my CFO, Mark, cut in, his voice as sharp as a knife. And frankly, it's a generous offer. We've seen your burn rate. We've seen your debt load. You're insolvent. You have 30 days, maybe 45, before you have to declare Chapter 11. At that point, your tech gets sold for parts, your employees get nothing, and your investors sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. He tapped the folder. This offer makes your primary investors whole, just barely. It saves the platform. And it saves you from personal and financial ruin. This isn't revenge, Mr. Reed. This is a lifeline. Every word was true. I had spent the last 2 weeks doing my due diligence. I knew everything. I knew about the loans Dylan had personally guaranteed. I knew about the money Ava had funneled into a consulting firm that didn't exist. I knew they weren't just failing, they were drowning. Dylan looked from Mark to me, his mind clearly racing, trying to find an angle. This was the man who could talk his way out of anything. Sam. Samantha, he tried, leaning forward, attempting to summon that old, easy charm. The charm that worked on me. Listen. Let's send them out. Just you and me. Let's talk. We can work out a real partnership. Like we always talked about. Like we always talked about. He was trying to invoke a past he had personally set on fire. There is nothing to talk about, Dylan, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. The offer is in that folder. It's a silent acquisition. We absorb your debt, we take your assets, and we retain some of the staff. It's clean. It's non-negotiable. You bitch, Ava suddenly spat, her mask of fear replaced by a sudden, ugly venom. You've been planning this. You've been stalking us. I stood up, and the simple motion made her flinch back into her chair. What I have been doing, Ava, I said, walking slowly toward their end of the table, is building a company. You two have been running one into the ground. I placed my hands on the black granite, leaning in just slightly. They both shrank back. You have 2 options, I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, clear command. You can sign that deal, and you walk away with your dignity, what's left of it, and no personal lawsuits. Or you can walk out of this room, and I will let you drown. In 45 days, when you file for bankruptcy, I'll be first in line at the auction to buy your assets for pennies on the dollar. The choice is yours. Ava was openly crying now, silent, ugly tears of rage and defeat. Dylan looked at the folder. He looked at me. He saw no Sam in my eyes. He saw no pity. He saw a stranger, founder, and boss. And he saw that he had absolutely no cards left to play. You have 24 hours to review it with your board, I said, walking back to my chair. My offer expires tomorrow at noon. I nodded to Mark. We're done here. We stood up and walked out of the boardroom, leaving them sitting at the end of that long, polished table, with my folder, my contract, sitting between them like a time bomb. The board meeting, held 1 week later in that same room, was a formality. I had spent the week in confidential discussions with FinTech Solutions' primary shareholders. They weren't Dylan's friends. They were venture capitalists who had seen their 8-figure investment dwindle to almost nothing. When I showed them the numbers, my due diligence, and my offer, they didn't see revenge. They saw a miracle. They saw their only way out. The vote was unanimous. Luminera Creative, under a new subsidiary I'd created, acquired 100% of FinTech Solutions, its technology, and its debts. Dylan and Ava were there, as required. They sat at the end of the table, silent, watching the company they'd built and destroyed be signed over to me. When the final vote was cast, my new lawyer, a sharp woman named Helen, slid the final signature page packet to me. Revenge is best served with a calm smile and a signature pen. I picked up my pen, a heavy, black Mont Blanc. Before I sign, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room, there are 2 housekeeping items. I looked down at the table. Ava was staring at her hands. Dylan was staring at me, his face a hollow mask. First, I said, Ms. Chen. Our due diligence, confirmed by the board's internal audit, found significant financial misconduct. Specifically, the transfer of over $200,000 in corporate funds to an unaudited consulting firm, AC Futures, which, it turns out, is a shell corporation registered to your sister. Ava's head snapped, her face white with sheer panic. As the new owner of this company, I continued, my voice gentle, I am exercising my right to terminate your employment, effective immediately, for gross misconduct. You can't, she shrieked, jumping to her feet. That's. I can, I interrupted, my voice still perfectly calm. The board has already approved it. We are not pressing charges, as a condition of the sale. We find it cleaner this way. I looked toward the door. Security will escort you to your former office to collect your personal belongings. You have 10 minutes. 2 men in suits entered the room. Ava looked at Dylan, her eyes screaming for help. Dylan. Don't let her do this. Dylan didn't move. He wouldn't even look at her. He just stared at me, his expression broken. She let out a sound of pure, strangled fury. The security guards took her gently by the arms, and she was forced to go, her head bowed in a final, complete humiliation. When the door clicked shut, the room was silent again. I turned my gaze to Dylan. He was the only one left. Second, I said, Mr. Reed. He visibly tensed, bracing himself. You'll be staying on. He looked up, a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it hope? Relief? For now, I added, and the flicker died. You are being reassigned. Your title is now Director of Legacy Systems. You will be reporting to my head of tech, Mr. Donovan. I let that sink in. He, the co-founder and partner, was now a mid-level director, reporting to someone on my team. Your first assignment, I said, is to draft a comprehensive audit of all active server contracts and licensing agreements. I want to see where every dollar of waste is. I expect that report to be on my desk by Monday morning. He just stared at me. He couldn't speak. He was my subordinate. I gave him a small, polite, corporate smile. Welcome to the team, Dylan. Then I turned back to the packet in front of me. I uncapped my pen. The room was so quiet I could hear the click it made. I signed my name, Samantha Reed, on the final line. The signature was smooth and strong. I had never yelled. I had never gloated. I had won. Winter had given way to a warm, bright summer. The integration of FinTech Solutions technology was complete. We had successfully salvaged the core architecture, trimmed the fat, and repackaged it under the Luminera brand. It was already projected to increase our profits by 30%. My life had found a new, quiet rhythm. My days were long, filled with back-to-back meetings, strategic planning, and the 1,000 small decisions that come with running a company. I didn't work 18-hour days fueled by anger anymore. I worked 12-hour days fueled by purpose. My work was no longer a shield, it was an empire. I still saw Dylan. Not socially, of course. I saw him in the elevator, a ghost in a gray suit. I saw him in the cafeteria, eating alone. As the director of legacy systems, he was a ghost haunting his own machine. He did his work. He submitted his reports. He was quiet, efficient, and broken. He never spoke to me unless spoken to, and I never spoke to him. Ava was gone. After the termination, she had signed a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for me not pressing criminal charges. I heard she'd moved back to her hometown in Oregon, defeated. They were no longer a they. They were just two separate, broken people. I was in my office late one Thursday. The sun was setting, painting the city in strokes of orange and purple. I was signing off on the quarter's payroll when my assistant, Jess, buzzed my intercom. Ms. Reed, her voice was hesitant. Mr. Reed is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's asking if you have a moment. I paused, my pen hovering over the paper. I felt nothing. No anxiety, no anger. Just a mild, distant curiosity. Send him in, Jess, I said, and signed my name. The door opened. Dylan walked in, and for the first time in 6 months, he wasn't just a shadow in the hall. He was in my space. My office. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and there were dark, hollow circles under his eyes. The cheap suit he wore, a far cry from the tailored ones he used to love, hung off his frame. He stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, just inside the door, as if he was afraid to come any closer. Thank you for seeing me, he said. His voice was quiet, raspy. What is it, Dylan? I asked, not unkindly. I just wasn't going to waste time. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. Sit. He flinched, like he didn't expect the offer, and sat stiffly on the edge of the seat. He looked at my desk, at the awards, at the view behind me. He looked anywhere but at me. I know you're busy, he started, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. I'm submitting my resignation tomorrow. I nodded. Okay. I can't do this anymore, he whispered, more to himself than to me. Being here. Watching you. He finally looked up, and his eyes were full of raw, desperate pain. I never said I was sorry, Samantha. Not really. I waited. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of traffic 50 floors below. I was a coward, he said, the words seeming to tear out of him. And I was a fool. What I did to you, and what I did with her, it was weakness. I was arrogant, and I thought I could have everything. I thought you'd never find out. He shook his head, a bitter, self-hating motion. And the worst part? The sickest part? I blew my whole life for nothing. It wasn't love. It was just selfish. It was just easy. He let out a shaky breath. And Ava, she's gone. She won't talk to me. She blames me for everything. And she's right. I lost my company. I lost her. And I lost you. I lost the only person who ever actually saw me. He was crying now. Not the desperate, manipulative tears from our old apartment, but the quiet, hopeless tears of a man who had finally hit rock bottom. I wanted you to know, he choked out. I know it doesn't change anything. I know I'm a monster. I had to say it. I'm so sorry, Sam. For all of it. I'm sorry I broke you. He looked at me, his face crumpled, waiting. He was waiting for me to scream. To cry. To forgive him. He was waiting for me to give him some kind of release from the prison he had built for himself. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at this man, this shell of a man, and I felt the last, tiny, cold ember of the past finally turn to ash. You're wrong about one thing, Dylan, I said, my voice soft. He looked up, confused. What? You didn't break me. I stood up from my desk and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights were just beginning to glitter, a diamond-hard tapestry of human ambition. I thought of the girl who had cried on a friend's couch, hollowed out with grief. I thought of the woman who had lived on coffee and anger, building an idea in a tiny, bare-walled apartment. I thought of the CEO who had just calmly and quietly taken back her entire life, and more. I turned back to him. He looked so small, lost in the shadow of my office. A small, genuine, and not unknown smile touched my lips. You didn't break me, I repeated. You built me. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. He didn't understand. He was seeking forgiveness or hatred. He wasn't prepared for gratitude. He wasn't prepared to be rendered irrelevant, to be downgraded from a villain to a mere catalyst. An accidental tool. I don't. Goodbye, Dylan, I said, and the words were not a dismissal, but a release. A final one. He just nodded, a jerky, broken movement. He stood up, turned, and walked out of my office for the last time. I heard the door click shut, a sound of absolute finality. I was alone. But I wasn't hollow. I was full. I turned back to the window. The city spread out before me, a vast, glittering reflection of everything I had become. The woman staring back at me from the glass, her silhouette sharp against the skyline, was no victim. She wasn't a woman scorned. She was just Samantha Reed. And she was finally, completely, whole.